Two children sit in the same classroom, facing the same challenge. One has always been told they're so smart. The other often hears, "You worked really hard on that." When the lesson becomes difficult, the first child hesitates, afraid that struggling means they're not smart after all. The second leans in, believing effort can bridge the gap. That small difference in mindset quietly determines how far each will go. This simple idea lies at the heart of mindset. The New Psychology of Success by Carol S. Dweck. Through decades of research, Dweck uncovered a pattern that explains why some people thrive under pressure while others shut down. It's not talent, luck, or even intelligence. It's how we think about growth itself. Those who see their abilities as flexible learn faster, adapt better, and achieve more than those who see their traits as fixed. Carol Dweck, a Stanford University psychologist, has spent her career studying how praise, feedback, and self-belief shape human potential. Her work transformed classrooms, locker rooms, and workplaces worldwide. As she wrote, praising children's intelligence harms their motivation. True success, she discovered, doesn't come from proving you're smart, but from believing you can keep getting better. Building on that idea, the author explains that we all tend to fall into one of two broad ways of thinking about our abilities. One group believes that intelligence, talent, and personality are largely fixed. They assume people are born with a certain level of skill or potential, and that's it. These are the ones who say, "I'm just not a math person," or "I've never been creative." The other group believes abilities can be developed through practice, feedback, and persistence. They might say, "I'm not good at this yet," but they keep going. This second way of thinking, the growth mindset, is what allows people to stretch beyond what seems possible. The author first explored these patterns through years of psychological research, once calling them entity and incremental theories of intelligence. Those with an entity mindset see ability as something you either have or don't have. Because they believe effort won't change much, they avoid challenges that might expose their weaknesses. On the other hand, those with an incremental mindset view every challenge as a step toward improvement. For them, effort isn't a sign of inadequacy. It's the very thing that leads to mastery. This difference shows up in subtle but powerful ways. When people with a fixed mindset face something difficult, they tend to shut down. They might say, "This isn't for me," or blame bad luck or unfair circumstances. The growth-minded person approaches the same obstacle as a chance to learn. They think, "I don't get this yet, but if I keep working at it, I'll figure it out." The author said that this belief doesn't just change motivation. It rewires how we experience success and failure. In one of her most famous studies, students were divided into groups that received different kinds of praise. Some were told they were smart. Others were praised for their effort. When later given harder tasks, the smart group quickly lost confidence, while the effort group embraced the challenge and kept trying. The takeaway was clear. When success depends on innate ability, people fear failure. But when success comes from learning, failure becomes a natural part of growth. The author thinks this pattern continues well beyond childhood. Adults with a fixed mindset may avoid learning new skills or feedback at work, seeing both as threats. Meanwhile, those with a growth mindset view criticism as a useful mirror, something that helps them improve. One way the author describes this shift is through the word "yet." Saying, "I can't do this yet," instantly opens the door to possibility. It tells the brain that growth is still unfolding, that ability isn't closed off. Research supports this idea. In classroom experiments, when students were taught how the brain forms new connections through effort, their motivation and grades rose significantly. Simply understanding that the mind itself can grow changed how they approached every subject. The same principle applies to athletes, artists, and professionals. When people believe they can get better, they actually do. The author summed it up in one simple line: effort ignites ability and turns it into accomplishment. The message is that talent alone isn't what matters most. It's the willingness to learn, to keep trying, and to treat every setback as information. What makes this idea so transformative is how it reshapes the meaning of success. When we value learning over perfection, we stop worrying about looking capable and start focusing on becoming capable. It's not about avoiding failure. It's about using failure as fuel. A fixed mindset traps people in proving they're enough, while a growth mindset frees them to keep improving. In that shift lies the real foundation for success in school, work, and everyday life. Building on this idea, the author believes our mindset begins forming long before we realize it. From an early age, children absorb messages about what success means through words, tone, and the way adults respond to their efforts. A simple comment like, "You're so smart," can plant the belief that ability is something you either have or don't have. Over time, that belief can make children afraid to try anything that might expose weakness. In contrast, when adults say, "You worked really hard on that," the message becomes one of growth. It tells the child that effort, not talent, is what drives improvement. The author said that this distinction might sound small, but its effect is enormous. In one of her well-known studies, children were divided into two groups. One group was praised for being smart, while the other was praised for working hard. Later, when offered a choice between easy or challenging puzzles, the smart group chose the easy ones to protect their image. The hardworking group went straight for the tougher puzzles, curious to see how much they could learn. What this showed is that the way we praise shapes the risks people are willing to take. When success depends on maintaining an image, curiosity disappears. When success is tied to learning, challenge becomes exciting. The author thinks that many classrooms still unknowingly reinforce the fixed mindset. Grades, rankings, and labels like gifted or struggling often send the message that intelligence is fixed. This can make students cautious, more focused on proving their worth than expanding it. But when teachers encourage mistakes as part of learning, the atmosphere changes completely. The author describes a teacher who, instead of saying, "You got it wrong," would say, "You're not there yet." That single word, "yet," invited students to keep going. It reminded them that failure is not the end of learning, but part of the process. Creating a growth-oriented classroom doesn't require complex methods. It begins with small habits, recognizing effort, celebrating persistence, and viewing every challenge as a step forward. When teachers normalize the struggle of learning, students stop seeing it as a sign of failure. A teacher saying, "That was too easy. Let's try something that will stretch your thinking," helps students value growth over perfection. It teaches them that challenge is not something to avoid, but the exact moment where learning takes place. The author's studies also found that explaining why effort matters helps children believe in it. When students learned about how the brain forms new connections with practice, a concept called neuroplasticity, they became more motivated. In schools where this was taught, grades improved, especially among those who previously saw themselves as bad at school. Understanding that the brain can grow changed how they approached every subject, from math to art. It wasn't magic or luck, it was belief, combined with consistent effort. Parents play a similar role. When a child says, "I can't do this," a parent who responds, "You can learn it. Let's try again," is teaching resilience. That mindset helps children face frustration without giving up. Over time, they start to internalize the idea that ability grows through repetition and strategy, not natural talent. These early messages form the foundation for lifelong learning habits. The author's main message is simple but powerful. In education, the goal shouldn't be to prove how smart a child is, but to help them become smarter through effort. When adults focus more on the process than the outcome, they create learners who enjoy challenges instead of avoiding them. It's a shift from performance to progress, from showing intelligence to growing it. Moving from classrooms to competition, the author found that the same principles guiding learning also drive greatness in sports. Behind every remarkable athlete lies a pattern that goes beyond talent. The author thinks what truly separates champions from others isn't natural ability, but their relationship with effort and failure. The best athletes treat mistakes as part of progress, not signs of weakness. They're students of their craft, always seeking ways to grow rather than to prove. In her research, the author discovered that many elite performers, from Michael Jordan to Serena Williams, share one trait: a growth mindset. She wrote, "Almost every truly great athlete has had a growth mindset. Jordan is a clear example. Early in his career, he wasn't the most naturally gifted player on the court, but he had an unmatched hunger to improve. After being cut from his high school basketball team, he didn't see it as a final judgment of his ability. He saw it as feedback. Every failure became motivation to work harder, and that attitude eventually made him one of the greatest players in history." The author also contrasts how fixed and growth-minded athletes respond to mistakes. Those with a fixed mindset often hide from errors because they fear they'll be exposed as less talented. They focus on looking flawless rather than learning. Growth-minded athletes, on the other hand, crave feedback. They want to know what went wrong so they can adjust. The legendary basketball coach John Wooden once said, "You aren't a failure until you start to blame." The author agrees, suggesting that blame is a form of self-protection that prevents growth. When players take responsibility for improvement, instead of defending their ego, real progress begins. The same logic applies to practice. The author said that what sets top performers apart isn't talent, but how deliberately they practice. Research in psychology supports this idea. What truly predicts expertise is not the number of hours someone trains, but how they train. Athletes who focus on refining weaknesses and stretching their limits show faster improvement than those who simply repeat what they already do well. As the author put it, only one thing distinguishes geniuses: practice. Growth-minded athletes also challenge the limits of age and circumstance. The author points to stories like that of swimmer Dara Torres, who won Olympic medals at 41 years old. Many saw her age as a barrier, but she treated it as just another challenge to work through. Her mindset focused on what could be learned and improved, not what couldn't be changed. This way of thinking redefines what's possible, reminding us that growth doesn't stop at a certain point in life. It continues as long as effort continues. The same mindset shapes not just individuals, but entire teams. Coaches who create environments where mistakes are treated as opportunities, not punishments, see stronger, more resilient athletes. When players feel safe to take risks and learn openly, creativity increases and performance rises. It's the culture of curiosity, not fear, that drives long-term success. The author's conclusion about performance is simple yet profound. Whether in sports or any other field, progress comes from a willingness to learn rather than the desire to look perfect. Champions are not defined by their victories alone, but by their attitude toward effort, failure, and feedback. In both sports and life, a growth mindset turns ordinary moments of struggle into the foundation for excellence. Carrying this idea beyond the sports arena, the author turns attention to another field where mindset quietly shapes success: business and careers. In the fast-paced world of leadership, innovation, and teamwork, the difference between thriving and collapsing often comes down to whether people believe they can grow or whether they think their abilities are fixed. The author thinks that mindset doesn't just influence how individuals perform, it defines entire organizational cultures. Leaders, in particular, reveal their mindset through how they handle power and pressure. Fixed mindset leaders, the author said, often chase the image of brilliance. They want to appear decisive, flawless, and always right. This obsession with looking smart makes them avoid feedback, resist change, and sometimes silence those who question them. They build organizations where mistakes are feared rather than examined. In contrast, growth-minded leaders see leadership as a learning process. They admit their missteps, listen to criticism, and reward persistence. Instead of asking who's to blame, they ask, what can we learn? This attitude builds trust and inspires others to experiment without fear of failure. The author highlighted how a company's mindset can determine its fate. A striking case was Enron, once hailed as a company of geniuses. Its executives valued talent above all else, creating a culture obsessed with appearing brilliant. Employees hid mistakes to protect their image, and questioning leadership was seen as weakness. That environment bred arrogance and ultimately contributed to the company's collapse. On the other hand, growth-minded organizations like Google or Pixar operate differently. They promote a culture of learning, encouraging people to fail fast, learn fast. Mistakes are treated as data points, not disasters. This openness fuels creativity, adaptability, and long-term success. The author's surveys found that employees in growth-oriented companies feel safer taking risks and sharing new ideas. They know their input won't be punished if it doesn't work out. That psychological safety creates stronger collaboration. People in such environments celebrate shared victories, divide credit fairly, and handle rejection as part of the creative process. When a company builds this kind of culture, innovation becomes a habit rather than a lucky accident. Mindset also plays a vital role in individual careers. Professionals who see their skills as flexible handle criticism and change with more resilience. Instead of saying, "I'm not good at this," they say, "I'm learning." This small shift transforms obstacles into opportunities for improvement. The author said that curiosity is far more valuable than perfectionism. A perfectionist tries to avoid mistakes at all costs, while a learner uses mistakes to move forward. Those who continually ask, "What can I take away from this?" end up growing faster and adapting better to new challenges. To apply this practically, the author suggests small but meaningful habits. Praise effort, not just results. After finishing a project, reflect on what worked, what didn't, and what can be improved next time. Ask for feedback even when it's uncomfortable. These daily actions not only build personal growth, but also influence those around you. Over time, such behaviors spread, creating workplaces where learning outweighs ego and improvement becomes the norm. The author's message is clear. In the long run, businesses and careers built on learning endure, while those built on image crumble. Success in modern work doesn't come from being the smartest person in the room. It comes from being the one most willing to grow. Extending the idea of growth beyond work and achievement, the author explores one of life's most personal areas, relationships. Just as careers and talents flourish through effort, the same principle applies to love and connection. The author thinks that the mindset we bring into our relationships often determines whether they deepen or slowly break apart. A growth mindset in love means seeing it as something to nurture and shape, while a fixed mindset treats it as something that either works or doesn't. The author said that great relationships are not discovered by luck or destiny, but built through understanding, patience, and consistent effort. Many people fall into the trap of the meant-to-be story, believing that perfect compatibility means no conflict and no struggle. This view fits the fixed mindset, where love is something magical that either exists or doesn't. Growth-minded partners, on the other hand, understand that strong relationships are cultivated. They treat love as an evolving project, one that requires communication, forgiveness, and learning from mistakes. In the author's research, this difference becomes clear when couples face problems. Those with fixed mindsets tend to see conflict as a sign of failure. When something goes wrong, they might say, "Maybe we're just not right for each other," or place blame on their partner. Growth-oriented partners take a different approach. Instead of asking who's at fault, they ask what can be learned from the disagreement. They see challenges as a way to understand each other better. The author wrote that there are no great relationships without conflict, because conflict, handled wisely, strengthens understanding and trust. This mindset also influences how partners view change. Over time, people grow, ambitions shift, and circumstances evolve. Fixed thinkers may react with disappointment, saying, "You've changed," as if that's the end of the story. Growth thinkers respond differently. They say, "How can we grow together?" They see change not as a threat, but as an opportunity to adapt and reconnect. This willingness to evolve keeps relationships alive rather than stagnant. Even simple acts reflect this mindset. When one partner struggles, the other offers encouragement rather than judgment. When communication breaks down, they work together to rebuild it instead of giving up. The author thinks this approach builds a kind of resilience that allows love to last through the messy, unpredictable parts of life. The takeaway is simple yet profound. Healthy love is built, not found. Believing that both people can learn and grow together transforms relationships from fragile fantasies into strong, flexible bonds that can endure. After seeing how mindset shapes learning, work, and relationships, the next step is understanding how to actually build it. The author thinks that cultivating a growth mindset is not a single shift, but a daily practice, a gradual rewiring of how we speak to ourselves, handle mistakes, and define success. It begins in the smallest moments, especially in the way we respond to struggle. One of the simplest, most powerful tools is adding the word yet. Saying, "I can't do this," shuts down possibility, while "I can't do this yet" opens the door to learning. That single word changes the story from final failure to temporary challenge. It reminds the brain that growth is a process, not an instant result. Teachers who've introduced this small shift to their students have seen dramatic changes in confidence and effort. The word, yet, becomes a quiet promise of potential. Another key idea the author shares is to praise the process, not the person. When we say, "You're so talented," we unintentionally trap people in fear of losing that label. But when we say, "You worked really hard on that," we highlight the actions that led to success. This distinction fuels motivation instead of anxiety. The author once wrote, "Don't praise intelligence, praise the process." In practice, this means noticing persistence, creativity, and problem-solving instead of natural ability. Over time, that approach creates a habit of valuing learning itself. The same principle applies when setting goals. Instead of focusing on outcomes like get an A or earn that promotion, shift attention to learning goals, understand this concept, or improve this skill. Outcome goals depend on results we can't always control, but learning goals keep us moving forward regardless of setbacks. The author thinks this focus on growth builds curiosity, because each step becomes part of the larger journey of getting better. A powerful way to strengthen this mindset is by modeling it. Parents, teachers, and leaders who openly admit their mistakes send a strong message that failure is normal and useful. Saying things like, "I got this wrong, but here's what I learned," shows others how to transform setbacks into lessons. In teams or families, this honesty builds trust and encourages others to take risks without fear. Failure, in this light, becomes one of the best teachers. Instead of saying, "I failed," try asking, "What did I discover?" Reflection turns errors into stepping stones rather than dead ends. The author believes this is how resilience grows, not by avoiding mistakes, but by learning to face them with curiosity. Small reminders also help keep this mindset alive. Surrounding yourself with cues, like quotes, notes that say "not yet," or even a playlist of motivational talks, keeps your focus on progress rather than perfection. The more often we see and hear messages of growth, the more natural they become in our thinking. And as this mindset grows within us, it naturally spreads outward. Recognizing others for their effort and persistence builds a shared culture of learning. In workplaces, friendships, and families, this collective mindset makes everyone feel safer to try, fail, and try again. In the end, developing a growth mindset isn't about dramatic change, it's about consistency. It's built through everyday words, small reactions, and quiet reflections. Over time, these moments accumulate, reshaping how we approach challenges and how far we allow ourselves to go. At its heart, mindset, the new psychology of success reminds us that success isn't about being the best, it's about getting better. The author thinks that our true potential expands only when we believe that effort, not talent, is what drives growth. Whether it's in school, work, or relationships, progress begins the moment we stop trying to prove ourselves and start focusing on improving ourselves. The next time you face a setback or doubt your ability, try adding one small word. Yet. I'm not good at this, yet. That simple phrase turns frustration into possibility. It shifts the focus from what you can't do now to what you can learn over time. Persistence, practiced day by day, quietly compounds into confidence and skill. In everyday life, remember to praise yourself and others for trying, not just succeeding. Ask, "What did I learn today?" That question alone keeps growth alive. As the author said, why waste time proving how great you are when you could be getting better? The path to real success is growth, one yet at a time.